Hi, Jason. It's such an honor to talk to you about Skyfire. I really enjoyed how the movie starts with a bang, kind of like how 2020 did. How have you
Yeah.
been coping with the situation now that it's almost been a year?
Oh, there's no one's got any right to complain who's got a roof and food and warmth. So I guess the answer is fine. Within that, I could complain about a million things, and like everyone else, I'm, uh, a hotbed of anxiety and terror. And I've got teenage kids, and I worry about them. But there are so many people suffering so badly in the world that I'm not sick, and I'm overfed. So those are good things.
That's very true. So in the movie, it says that nature creates, but nature also destroys, or something along those lines. And so, do you think that the pandemic is the Earth's way of taking back its power?
Well, I don't think there's no question at all that it wouldn't have happened if we weren't taking back the forest and we weren't mixing with animals in ways that we didn't previously. And that there are many new diseases likely to come online because of what we're doing to the planet and to ourselves. Um, but I wouldn't want to tie this. I can't pretend that this film has a giant ecological message or for the world. It's an action adventure disaster escapist fantasy. But yeah, there's no. I think that years ago I was traveling in the rainforest with my wife, and we came across a World Health Organization outpost where they were studying plants with the local shamans for their curative powers. And they were studying them because they knew they wouldn't be there long. The shamans wouldn't be around much longer, and these areas and these plants may well not be there much longer. So we're losing things and we're unleashing things that were not meant to happen.
So I actually watched the movie with my cat, and he couldn't take his eyes off the screen. He loved it so much. And
Well, that's thrilling. The audience has multiplied, not just humans, to various four-legged creatures also.
um, I thought maybe it's because he's an animal and he has more respect for nature or something.
Possibly just the cat is as bored as the rest of us are staying indoors. And anytime something is blowing up and jeeps are racing and people are shouting and screaming, it feels like there's
Exactly.
something going on.
Yeah. But I feel like Skyfire shows that very well with your character because he's I love that he's such a great character. He's like a businessman. He has his flaws, but he also has some sort of growth throughout the end. But do you think that this
Sure.
message of respecting nature was that something that inspired you to take on this role, or why did
No,
you?
I'd be lying. I can't pretend to shoehorn this into a message movie. It isn't that. God knows we need them and we all need to change our behavior, but I don't think this movie is any part of that. It's, any more than Jurassic Park is. It's an escapist fantasy. Actually, it's what the Chinese call a rescue movie. We call them disaster movies in the West, but they don't. I wanted to take the role on because it was big and juicy and broad colors. And, obviously at the time that we shot it, we didn't know a pandemic was coming, but I like to do small, detailed human stories and peel back the layers of what make us human beings. But every now and again, I like to get in the toy box and play with all the toys. And the man directing this, Simon West, is a master of that kind of mayhem. He directed Con Air and Lara Croft and Expendables 2 and stuff. And he's just he finds this stuff easy and is great at it. So I knew I'd be in good hands. And these are the movies I watched when I was a kid. We haven't made them for 30 years or so. And I watched these when I was little.
What's also interesting in the movie is that it shows how history repeats itself or how humans sometimes don't learn from their mistakes. What is one important lesson that you've learned throughout the past year?
God, I don't know if I have. There are so many people, certainly at the end of the year, journalists, when they're filling newspapers and magazines and online also, are trying to find some constructive, spiritual message to be taken from it. And I appreciate nature more. I loved the first lockdown when I could hear the trees in London and life became much simpler. Life can get very, very busy for an actor. Certainly you get asked to do lots of things that aren't to do with acting, and I can say yes to many things because I like my world to be whirring and busy all the time. And it's got very, very unbusy. And just a simple rhythm of eating with my children and cooking and washing and cleaning and just, you know, the simple chores of life provide great comfort. I think I have nothing wise. I haven't been one of those people who've turned it into something constructive. I haven't learnt how to make a banjo out of driftwood or a new language or anything. I haven't been that creative. I find it hard to focus. But I suppose if when I look back, I'll picture myself at a sink scrubbing pans. But I guess what I've taken from it is we have no control over so many things in the world, and the only things we have control over are our attitude to things. So to try and take as much pleasure from the moment and find joy and not argue about the little things, and take solace and comfort and love wherever I can find it and wherever I can give it.
That is very true. So another touching theme in the movie is how tragedy can drift people apart or bring them back together. Like, for example, because of the pandemic and working from home, I've been spending a lot more time with my cat, which I couldn't before. Do you hope that this movie will help bring people together right now in some sort of way?
I mean, I'd so like to, and I could make the argument out, make this movie part of what the world needs at this particular moment. It's what one does when you have movies coming out. But it is what it is. It's a great, big, escapist fantasy. I think that what it can do, I mean, you know, what have I done over the last year? Mostly the time that I'm spending with my kids, my wife, when we're in front of the screen. The rest of the time we're in our rooms doing our things. So it's been very difficult negotiating what to watch. Everybody has very different tastes, but it also fragmenting the household where everyone's in their own room watching something on the laptop is rather tragic at a time when you don't see other people. So at the very least, it provides 2 hours when you can all get together and gasp and laugh. And, you know, its tongue is firmly in cheek, which doesn't mean it's a comedy. It's very dramatic and very emotional. But these are gigantic, slightly ridiculous, but brilliantly carried off stunts everywhere. So I think it will provide at least 2 hours or an hour and 40 minutes where you can forget. You can forget, if you're like me, the doom-laden statistics and the new variants and the mutants and what's going to happen with schools or work or money or whatever. And you could just be taken on a journey. And there is huge value in that. So, you know, I hope that it gives some people some fun, some catharsis.
I mean, that's important too, right?
Yeah, I guess.
And the complicated relationship between fathers and their children is another topic in the movie, which you have a lot of acting experience regarding that, playing Lucius Malfoy. So, but in Skyfire, your character has this watch that his father gave him. Mm-hmm. You have anything like that maybe reminds you?
I don't have any items. No, my dad is still alive, thankfully, although he had COVID very, very badly. My mum died a few years ago. I didn't inherit any. There's no physical things, but for me, it's not a physical thing. There's just phrases or moments in life where my mum would have been saying something, and rituals every year at a certain time of the year, and you know, she's either missing at the table or she's present in my head or heart, or I find myself saying or doing something with my children, thinking, I'm not even sure that was me saying that. I think that might be an echo. So no, I don't. But it's an interesting point that you made, because so often in the West, when we tell stories, what at the very heart of the relationships is always the romance. So Titanic is about a boat and all the many passengers who died, but at the heart of it is a romance. And Dr. Zhivago is a story about the Russian Revolution, but at the heart of it is a love triangle. Whereas it tells you something about Chinese culture, that at the heart of this story, although there are some couples, it's really about a father and daughter, because the intergenerational things are key and priorities, both in their narratives and in their lives in China. And I think that's true of lots of Chinese stories, because this is a Chinese film made by Chinese people. There's an English director, I'm the only English actor, but it's mostly Chinese, and it was written by Chinese people. And I thought that was an interesting insight into their culture and how they view what's important.
You said before that Chinese people call disaster movies rescue movies. Other than that, what is the biggest difference that you notice between a Chinese set and a Western set?
Well, first of all, it's hard for me to tell since I don't speak Chinese. So, you can pick up subtle cultural references when you're understanding what's going on around you. I felt like I'd landed on another planet because I couldn't understand a word anyone was saying to each other. So I'm not sure that I'm the greatest, I have the greatest insight. So I can judge mostly by that, well, the work ethic was insane. They were used to actually working 7 days a week on projects, not having any days off till they're finished, which is unheard of in the West, and not having any set level of what we call turnaround, which is when you finish at 8 o'clock at night, you can't start till 8 o'clock in the morning. They don't do any of that stuff. So that their expectation of how to work was different, but also you can see it in the film partially. And I experienced it when I had to learn little bits of Chinese to do it, which is they express themselves differently. And I presume that's a clue to what's going on inside. So a question doesn't go up at the end. There's no weakness in the question. It goes down. All of the Chinese language is about tones. Each sound can be made on an upward, a downward, a high, or a low inflection, and they mean completely different things. But you can see that the way they express emotion and their where and how they get sentimental and where and how they express anger, it's all different. And I assumed when I was having to learn bits of the language, it would be like I speak a few European languages that it would just swap out the word, but you don't swap out the word. These things are expressed in a completely different way, and I presume felt in a slightly different way.
That's so interesting. The movie also shows how technology can save lives, kind of like streaming services during the pandemic right now. Like you were saying, it's a form of escapism. I don't know where I would be without streaming services during this whole time. So.
Well, where will we all be without the things we've been watching? Well, we might be reading, or we might be writing, we might be painting, we might be making music. There are many things we might be doing that might be just, if not more, fulfilling than the things we've been doing so passively, because watching is a passive activity. So I don't know if the streaming services have saved the world's sanity. They might have pacified us. But in the film, rather appropriately, I think that I play an entrepreneur who is led by the science. He found the scientist that told him the things he wanted to hear so he could build a resort inside a volcano. Luckily for the audience, the volcano blows up almost immediately. But if it hadn't, he is one of those people around the world who is pushing boundaries because they can be pushed, because there's a profit to be made, and because natural curiosity takes us there. I'm not sure that there are certainly areas of exploration at the moment on the planet that are not to the benefit of humankind, but they're an inevitable consequence of people like the character I play.
In the movie, your character mentions that the self-generation likes to live dangerously close to death, and that such disasters are what people really want to see. When it comes to movies, viewers enjoy watching such catastrophes like in Skyfire or just horror movies in general.
Always.
Why do you think that is, though?
Audiences have always loved vicarious thrills. I mean, I guess before we started telling stories to each other, which I don't know how far back you have to go, but before the beginning of time almost, maybe life was full of so many dangers that you certainly wouldn't want it in your fantasy. But since then, since we've gathered around fires to tell stories, maybe even as cautionary tales, we've wanted to have the safe thrill of being pounced on, being killed. The Greek tragedies were full of carnage and mayhem, and these were audiences who were at war at the time. I guess we like the moral blueprint it throws us, how to behave in crisis situations. The same reason we like going on roller coasters, and we like people jumping out and saying boo to us. Kids, babies like that game where you hide and you jump out. We like being taken on a big emotional journey without any real risk to ourselves, I think. And I just watched a horror film last night with my kids, and one of them loves them, and one of them goes, why would we ever do this to ourselves? I'm never doing that again. So I guess humankind is divided, but mostly we like being given vicarious thrills.
I like that, safe thrill. That makes sense.
Well, look, I've been to war many times on screen. I've actually hung out with and filmed with many people who've been to real war. I think they, like me, preferred the version with the fake bullets.
I hope so. So, what is the most dangerous thing or stunt you've ever done?
Oh, I've done far too many stunts that I should never have been allowed to do. I always beg to do them, and mostly it works out fine, and a couple of times it's gone horribly wrong. I mean, I'm still alive and I'm not in a wheelchair, so that's good. But I've been to hospital, and I'm carrying some injuries for the rest of my life that actually from quite innocuous things that I just shouldn't have been doing. So I think I've probably done more dangerous things off screen than on screen. They generally don't like you to risk the production slowing. It's not anyone really cares for my well-being. They care about stopping filming. But, you know, it's a playoff always, because the director would much rather see your face involved in whatever the thing is than have to cut away and shoot from behind you. So, yeah, I don't want to throw any directors under the bus, but I've been allowed to do things I probably should never have been allowed to do. I'm sure that will tail off as I get older.
Well, fire raining from the sky sounds like a nightmare to me, but in the end, Skyfire is a great reminder of how life can be over so quickly, and that we should tell the people that we love how much we love them right now.
Yeah.
So, on that note, I just want to say thank you for being such a big part of my childhood, and thank you so much for your time today. It was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much.
It's funny. You know, when people thank me for, particularly for, you know, being in the Potter films, it's so odd because acting is a pretty selfish, self-centered thing. I like to go and play. I do it. I probably would do it. I think it's fair to say I don't really care if anyone ever sees the things I'm in. I recognize people put money and time into it, and I need for someone to see something, otherwise I wouldn't get any more work. But the doing of it is the pleasure. And I don't really do it for anyone else's benefit. I do it because I somehow need it or like it or I'm satisfied by it. So it's a bonus that you enjoyed it. So you don't need to thank me. I did it purely selfishly. But thank you for thanking me.
You did a very good job. You sold it.
Great. Good. Well, thank you and good luck. And everybody stay safe. And hopefully we can all see each other face to face sometime soon.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.